Hey folks, this is immigration attorney Hassan Abdullah hailing from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm preparing this video for permanent residents, for green card holders, to give them advice on travel. A very common question that I receive as an immigration attorney is from permanent residents, green card holders, as to what kind of travel is acceptable as a permanent resident and what consequences can travel have overseas or abroad while I'm a permanent resident. It's a very important question because your travel pattern can have negative consequences on your ability to return to the country if you're a permanent resident, and it can also have negative consequences on your ability and timing when you can apply for citizenship, for naturalization. So one very important distinction that permanent residents should understand is the distinction between continuity of residence and physical presence. It's a very important distinction. You see, if you're a permanent resident in this country, you are going to be able to apply for citizenship within 5 years from the date you have received your green card status, your lawful permanent resident status. If you gained your permanent residence, however, through marriage to a U.S. citizen, it would be a 3-year period. You would have to wait. You can also apply 3 months in advance to that um, because the application can finally get processed. It takes about 3 months. So in reality, you can apply 4 months, say 4 years, 9 months from the date you got your green card, or 2 years, 9 months if you got it through marriage. Anyway, to stay on topic, what about this distinction between physical presence and continuity of residence? You have to have a continuous residence in the country for 5 years. So we're just assuming that you have the 5-year rule, not the 3 rule. If it's 3 years, it's 3 years. So anyway, 5 years you have to have continuous residence in the country with no breaks. But you can leave the country and still maintain continuity of residence. In order to apply for naturalization, you have to at least spend half your time of that statutory period in the United States physically. So you have to, for 5 years, for a permanent resident who gets to apply in 5 years, they have to have physical presence for 2.5 years before they can apply for naturalization, and continuity of residence for 5 years. So physical presence is simple enough. It just means you're physically here. What about the issue of continuity of residence? What does that mean? Well, this is where my advice on travel comes in. If you spend more than 6 months outside the country, you might break your continuity of residence. If you spend a year outside the country, you will break your continuity of residence. So what if you get a reentry permit? That's another question people ask. If you get a reentry permit, even if you spend a year, if you do spend a year out of the country, you're still going to break your continuity. What happens if you apply for naturalization and the immigration officer reviewing your case determines that you have broken continuity? What that means is, the consequence of that is, you're going to have to wait 4 years plus 1 day, essentially 4 years. I don't know why the law says 4 years, 1 day, but anyway, you have to wait 4 years, 1 day from the time you broke your continuity to apply for naturalization. That's the rule. So again, if you're here for a year, if you're outside for a year or longer, you will break continuity for sure. And you should get a reentry permit because you might not even be allowed back in the country without one if you spend more than a year out. If you are spending a trip outside the country 6 months or longer, but less than a year, you might break continuity, but you have ways to argue that you didn't, and there's a specific regulation, 8 CFR 316.5 C1I. And I'm going to read it out to you. It says, departures of more than 6 months and less than 12 do not necessarily break the continuity, the required continuity, but the burden is on the applicant to establish that you did not, in fact, abandon residence in the U.S. So you've got to be prepared to prove that you didn't break your continuity. And you have to show maintenance of ties in the United States. And so this regulation lists a few types of few factors that they consider, which is that you didn't terminate your employment in the United States despite this break outside the country, that your immediate family remained in the United States, that you retained access to your abode in the United States, and that you did not obtain employment abroad. And even if you did, we've had cases where we've still been able to successfully claim that the person did not break continuity and they were able to do it. So if you've done these things, if you've traveled abroad, worked abroad, and you also, or you plan to do this, it's really important to speak to an immigration attorney to find out the potential consequences of that. So that's pretty much, again, a recap of that is, if you're spending a year, you will break continuity. Expect to show that 4-year one. Expect to have your clock reset, and you have to wait 4 years and a day to apply for naturalization. If you spend 6 months or more, but less than a year, you might be okay. You might not necessarily broken continuity. If you spend less than 6 months, that's a good thing. You don't want to do that on a regular basis, where you take 5 months and 15 days out of the country, you come back, touch soil, and leave. It's not a good pattern either to do. So that's basically my advice there. Get a reentry permit. If you're going to leave for more than 6 months, it's a good idea, just in case, to get a reentry permit. And definitely get a reentry permit if you're going to leave for more than a year. If you're gone for 2 years, because a reentry permit doesn't go longer than 2 years, you might not even be allowed back into the country. So another thing about travel, and if you're spending time abroad, is you can actually maintain, this is a special exception. If you're working for the government abroad, or in affiliated capacity, you might be able to maintain your residence, your continuity, even if you spend more than 2 years or more than a year out of the country. There's a special application for that. So I'm not going to explain that in detail. It would take a bit more time than I actually have on this video to get into that issue. What else do I want to say? It's also a lawful permanent resident's responsibility to pay taxes. So pursuant to 8 CFR 316.5 C2, and I quote, it states that an applicant who is lawfully admitted a lawfully admitted permanent resident of the United States, but who voluntarily claims non-resident status to qualify for special exemptions from income tax liability, or fails to file either federal or state income tax returns because he or she considers himself or herself to be a non-resident alien, raises a rebuttable presumption that the applicant has relinquished the privileges of permanent resident status in the United States. So that's another very important factor. As you can see, you have to pay your taxes in this situation, because if you don't, you'll be considered to have relinquished your status as a permanent resident. So that kind of runs the gamut of advice that I would give a potential, a permanent resident who's planning to travel. There might be some other scenarios, but I haven't gotten into them because there's a limited amount of time I have for this video. So for now, I hope you found this video to be helpful. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.